Welcome everyone to the August 26, 2021 school committee meeting. In keeping with an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law by Governor Baker on June 16, 2021, this meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board members will be remote and attendance shall count towards quorum. The meeting will be broadcast live on Facebook and recorded on ECAT. This meeting is open to the public. We will take questions by the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Please make sure to include your full name and address, and we'll do our best to answer all questions. However, we will not reread questions that have already been answered. All right. So first up is the regular school committee minutes from the July 22nd, 2021 meeting. Any comments, questions, edits? Can't see everyone. Here we go.
Caroline, you're on mute.
You're talking, Caroline. I don't know if we should wait for her. It looked like she was talking. I couldn't see her right at first. All right, I'll give it a minute.
I think she's logging back in.
Okay. Should I table those minutes till she comes back? Being it looked like she had a comment.
But then we have to do executive session, so she might have something to say about that one too.
I actually have something to say about that one.
All right, so let's give her a minute. She'll be back.
All right.
If you don't mind.
No, not at all.
Okay. Lynn, I think your minutes are awesome. Is Lynn on here? Is Lynn here?
Yeah.
Okay, Lynn, your minutes are awesome.
Do you want to move ahead to the next set of minutes so you can share your feedback on that, Michelle? And
Yes.
we'll come back to this.
All right. So we'll move on to the executive session from July 22nd, 2021. And actually, I can't share feedback because they're executive minutes, but I do have a question. So I think we should hold to discuss at whenever that time would be, just so I can get clarification. I'm not sure what that process is with the executive minutes.
Do you want
I
to
think you can just hold. Yeah, I think you can just hold them for comments.
So we'll just hold them. Do we have to vote to hold?
We can put it on another agenda.
Okay.
If you have a question, you can ask the question in an executive session, and then we
That's
can.
what I was gonna do. Okay, but I don't have to vote to table it.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna move Caroline over. She didn't use
So can we do the executive session meeting minutes in our executive session later on today? Can we answer?
You can't vote on accepting them, but you can ask a question on them and vote to accept them in public meeting.
Okay.
Caroline back. Caroline, just so you missed it, I have a question on the executive minutes. We skipped ahead to that. So we're gonna, I'll ask my question later tonight and then we'll
Okay.
have another agenda.
Okay, for some reason, I couldn't get on the iPad. We've been having, as Chrissy knows, all sorts of internet problems, but I'm on the phone now, which is, I have to hold up the whole meeting.
So that's okay. We're gonna go back to the regular minutes. Did you have comments or edits?
No,
Okay. So do I have a motion to accept the regular school committee minutes of July 22nd, 2021?
Star, so moved.
Do I have a second?
DeLuca, second.
Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durance, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yeah.
Star, yes.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to move the executive to the next meeting. All right. And the presentation for the Girl Scouts, I understand that there's a request to reschedule that for 9/9, our next meeting, September 9th. So I'm going to make a motion to table item 3 until the school committee meeting on September 9th, 2021. Do I have a second?
O'Neill, second.
Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durance, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Vote to approve out-of-state trip. Dr. Cabral?
Thank you. I don't think Coach Souza is here. So if you see in your packets, there is a written request for approval. They are seeking permission to attend the Ocean State Invitational on Saturday, September 25th. That's at Goddard Park in Warwick. They've attended that meet for most of the last 10 years. It's fairly typical cross-country invitational, but the major advantage is that there are unlimited entries. And as you know, Coach Souza tries to have as much participation of the athletes as possible. And this allows the full team to participate. They originally requested permission from you for 2 meets in Rhode Island, the Ocean State Invitational and Brown Northeast Championship, but the Brown Northeast Championship isn't taking place. Their revised request is just for the Ocean State Invitational. And so he has that information on the next sheet for you, including the purpose, the date, the location, about approximately 100 students. There's no cost to the student. The school system, as in the past, would pay for buses and the entry fee, which is covered by the athletic account. Kyle Souza, Allison Cleary, Troy Kent are the advisors, and they will not be requiring any additional chaperones. And that's for your consideration because it's an out-of-state request.
Any questions or comments? Jen?
So I know that we are going to discuss out of state or travel in general later as part of the overall protocols. For, I guess, would this, it's same day, right? So I think generally based on our spring travel protocols, same day trips weren't an issue. I just want to make sure that we're not, by approving this, that we won't have 100 kids come
In
back who then
conflict,
have to go through,
No,
Yeah.
I'm actually
take steps to get back in school.
Right, so that's a great point because we haven't talked about the MIAA recommendations yet. That's coming. This would not be in conflict with that.
Okay, All right, great,
This is
thank
an
you.
outdoor, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Do I have a motion to approve the out-of-state trip?
Star, so moved?
Do I have a second?
O'Neill, second.
A roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Thank you. All right. I know that we have some policy and protocol guidelines to talk about, but I would like to suggest that we move the district updates up to our next topic so that we can get the updates prior to having those other conversations.
Okay.
If that's agreeable, I would like to make a motion to move item 7 up, make it item 5 and move everything down a number.
Wiseman, second.
Okay, roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, district updates, Dr. Cabral.
Thanks. There have been a lot of changes recently. Again, we are following the trajectory of a largely unpredictable virus and even less predictable variant for which we don't have as much experience as we do with the original virus. So it makes sense that many people are coming out with some guidance now. We don't have that luxury, of course, because we need to open school with some protocols in place. Fortunately, the Easton Board of Health, as well as this school committee, did proactively supersede the DESE mask requirement and mandate universal masking. And so we will not have to change that in light of the governor and commissioner's recent recommendation to the Board of Health, and subsequently the Board of Health did authorize the commissioner to make universal masking mandatory in all public schools from pre-K to grade 12. The DESE guidance does say ages 5 and up, and it does say that 2 and up strongly recommended. However, we are maintaining the policy from last year, which is that all students would be required to wear a mask. There is no, I have had some requests regarding religious exemptions. There are religious exemptions are for vaccinations. There are not religious exemptions for masks currently. There may be extreme medical accommodations that may need to take place, and then even beyond that, exemptions, but certainly all accommodations would be exhausted first. In order for an accommodation to happen and for potential exemption to be clear, medical documentation of an existing condition by the treating physician or specialist doctor would have to be provided to the school nurse that indicates it's impossible for the student to wear a mask. We have seen cases, for example, where a child in a wheelchair who has physical limitations and would not be able to remove a mask if they were having difficulty breathing, for example, could potentially be an exemption. So it is medical issues of that nature. However, we had 0 medical exemptions last year. And so obviously this would have to be a medical condition that has manifest since last year. And again, that documentation would be provided to the school nurse. So hopefully that answers any questions people may have about how to go about that. There is not a form, there is not a form letter, there's not an outside form from other organizations that might be creating them. It's simply medical documentation as it is with any exemption, as it is with the vaccine exemption for medical reasons. So why is this the case, and why are people changing some recommendations? Well, I can speak locally. Certainly we all can see what's happening in the national and international arenas. Locally, our positivity rate in Easton has increased over the last 2 weeks. The positivity rate is currently 2.91%. In terms of vaccinations, 12 to 15-year-olds in Easton represent 62% of them are currently fully vaccinated. That's an increase of 7% from the last time we reported. And 16 to 19-year-olds in Easton, 48% of them are currently vaccinated. That's an increase of 3%. The current masking mandate by the commissioner, in addition to the ages I indicated and how Easton will be responding to that, the commissioner has that in place until October 1st and has said that after October 1st, if a school can prove that 80% of staff and students are appropriately vaccinated, then vaccinated individuals can remove masks. Again, like all DESE guidance, it is the responsibility of the school committee to meet the mandate, but has the latitude to exceed the mandate if necessary based on local conditions. And so we have not had that conversation yet, but it could not be below 80%. It certainly could supersede that as the metric to be used. Michelle?
I just want to clarify for people listening, the 80% of staff and students. Can you just clarify if that's 80% staff and 80% students, or total population?
Our understanding right now, by the way it was written, is 80% staff and 80% students. But Assistant Superintendent Pruitt and I have a meeting with the commissioner, an upcoming meeting on this issue with the commissioner. So we will ask that clarifying question and get back to you.
Thank you.
Caroline?
I'm sorry, I missed, you said 62% of 12 to 15-year-olds. I'm sorry, I missed the percentage for the 16 to 19.
Oh, okay, sorry. 16 to 19-year-olds is currently 48%.
48, okay. No, I heard the 8 for some reason. I missed the 40. Okay, thank you.
Sure. We are currently collecting information on, or we're in the process of collecting information about staff and vaccinated staff in schools. We do not have responses from every staff member yet, but from those we already have, which is more than half, the vaccination rate is over 95%. So we will continue to collect that information until we have all staff represented and let you know what that vaccination status is. Other masking information in terms of the CDC, they do require that all public transportation, including school buses, that individuals are fully masked at all times. So all passengers in school buses, vaccinated or unvaccinated, will be masked at all times, and bus windows will be open. They do not need to be fully opened per this requirement, but they will be opened. So even in the winter, they can be opened enough to circulate the air and create an environment that makes the ability for them to sit in the same seats possible, which was different at the beginning of last year. The MIAA has recently also distributed some information, not a lot, but they have, and it is in line with the DESE recommendations, which is that students who are outdoors, masking for the students and coaches is optional for any outdoor activity, but masking for students and coaches indoors is mandatory. And of course, that would be true of spectators as well. And in terms of activities such as music, instruments, singing. Again, all activities outdoors can be unmasked, and we will endeavor at all times to increase the social distancing between students when we do that, as well as have those activities happen outdoors. If they are indoors, masking is recommended, masking is required indoors when students are performing or singing, and of course, increasing the amount of social distance as much as possible in all cases. That's, I believe, about all the input I have on the masking, and that will lead us in a little bit, after I talk about a couple other things, that will lead us to our conversation on travel, and I think that's the only other thing we're discussing tonight. But Jackie, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, what about wind instruments? Didn't they give some guidance on that if it's
Wind,
indoors?
yeah, wind is the same as music. They're going to use the, again, endeavor to be outdoors whenever possible. When they're singing, they will have masks, but when they're using the instruments, they will use the accommodations that they used last year. So there are some mitigating tools they can use, covers and different appliances that we have in Easton. Jeff Benson is very much on top of that, and we will be using, I've already been in contact with him about the most up-to-date music guidance, and he's fully aware of it, and we'll make sure it's all in place. Thank you. In terms of travel, and I know that you are going to be discussing the school committee policy for masking, which does require a little bit of tweaking, even though I think I've captured what the intent of that is going to be. There's some wording issues that need to be clarified, and then also the masking guidance, which of course is different than a policy. So we'll be discussing both of those. But in terms of travel, the CDC recommendation for domestic travel is of course different for vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. And so vaccinated individuals are asked to mask and to monitor upon return for a full 14 days. Testing is recommended but not mandatory upon return. And the 14-day review of symptoms is critical in the sense that if any time within the 14 days the individual were to be symptomatic, then they would be required to be tested and to isolate. But asymptomatic vaccinated individuals are not required to take a test. They're encouraged, strongly encouraged, but are not required. Vaccinated individuals we are trying to get the test and stay in place, which I can talk a little bit more about in a moment. But for unvaccinated individuals, we will attempt to employ the test and stay protocol, which is a 7-day observation of an asymptomatic, someone with no symptoms whatsoever returning from a domestic trip. They will test for 5 of those 7 days by a test that will be provided by the Department of Education to the school department. A negative test for all 5 days allows them to remain in school, and they do remain in school while they're being tested. They would be masked at all times. And again, even if they have 5 negative Binax Now tests, which are PCR rapid tests, they would also be required to self-monitor for symptoms for 14 full days. If symptoms develop, then obviously the protocol changes. Michelle?
Just for clarification for those listening, in both these scenarios, you talked about masking for the 14 days, but that is just inside. Still, if they're outside in sports or something, they would not have to mask in either scenario.
For travel, it's going to be a little bit different
After
when someone is a close contact, but I haven't talked about that part yet.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. And then for international travel, again, it's different for vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. Vaccinated and again, this is in your packet and I just dropped the page. Vaccinated individuals are, it is a CDC requirement that vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals receive a COVID test 3 days prior to leaving the country they're visiting to come back to the United States. And so, of course, that is the requirement for us as well. It is also for vaccinated and fully vaccinated. Not only is there a mandatory test required before flying to the United States, but also a test 3 to 5 days after travel. Those that are vaccinated can be part of the test and stay during that period if they are masked in school and have no symptoms. Again, everyone will self-monitor for 14 days for symptoms, but anyone who is unvaccinated, in addition to testing before coming back to the United States, the CDC also wants them tested before leaving the United States. So an unvaccinated individual traveling internationally would test before leaving the United States. They would have a mandatory test before coming back to the United States. They would self-quarantine for 7 days with a negative test. Sorry, let me repeat that. They would test when they come back 3 to 5 days after coming back, but if the test and stay is in place, they can participate in the test and stay and still come to school masked and monitoring for symptoms. However, if they choose not to test, and in all cases, when a test is required, if anyone chooses not to test, then the isolation period would be in effect. The quarantine and or isolation period would be in effect. That is for travel. For close contact, we are actually still finalizing the playbook because we, again, just received more information from DESE, but also we're awaiting the phone call with the commissioner. So we will literally have that ready right when school is starting. Unfortunately, we have an emergency nursing staff meeting on Tuesday to go over the information that we receive, and we will make those final changes to the playbook of the response protocols, and we will get that out to everyone. Obviously, it's not our preference to do it this way. We are really being limited by the information that is not only coming to us late, but then being changed at a very late hour. We don't want multiple iterations of the playbook to be out there, and we don't want to cause any confusion. So I'm hoping that between the information that I'm providing for masking, sports involvement, activity involvement, the difference between being outdoors and indoors, and the travel, that will be very helpful for people to this point in terms of being a close contact in school. If that should happen before any information is sent to homes, then obviously administration and nursing staff will counsel individuals on an individual basis. But it is our belief, and again, I don't wish to be confusing, but it's our belief that obviously there will be differences between vaccinated and unvaccinated students and staff, but the requirements for students and staff will be the same, and they will be very closely mirroring the travel guidance that I just went over. in terms of having the test and stay. Again, the test and stay, while we are awaiting the shipment of tests now, the government has not provided the manpower for that. So we are still trying to determine how we're going to do the testing. But once we have that determined, of course, we'll let everyone know about that. But because there's universal masking at first and contact tracing, of course, will continue. We are going to have seating charts for all classrooms that will be maintained and updated in real time. There is no contact tracing on the buses because of the masking and the windows being open, as I indicated, just like there's no contact tracing on an airplane or other public transportation. But there will be in classrooms for anyone within 6 feet of a confirmed positive case, and we will notify everyone just as we did last year. And other than that, I think everything else is very similar in terms of asking individuals to do the self-assessment every day for any symptoms. We will share those lists again. Those lists have now been amended a bit. While the symptoms are the same, it is a different number of symptoms that identify the course of action for people, whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated. So we're going to be sharing that information as well. I believe that's it for now, but of course, I'm open to any questions as we review the mask protocol, policies and guidelines, as well as any of the other information that I've discussed.
Does anyone on the school committee want to ask questions prior to going into the next 3 items, next 2 items? Nancy?
Yeah, just one question. You just mentioned that close contact was 6 feet, but the kids are going to be 3 feet apart this year, right?
Yes.
Where it's practical.
Yep.
To put 3 feet apart. But
Correct.
the close contact notification is still 6 feet.
Yes, that is
Okay.
that is consistent with what it was in the spring.
Okay. Yeah, no, I knew it was 6 feet, but they were also they sat 6 feet apart in their classrooms too.
No, in the spring it was 3 feet apart.
Oh, it was 3. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, that was in the hybrid. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
But isn't there a difference in notification or course of action between 3 feet and 6 feet?
In terms of whether people have to quarantine, yes. But we still notify everyone who's within 6 feet, yes.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Basically, the difference is between 3 and 6 feet, the notification is made, and it's parent choice if they wish for their child to be quarantined. But under 3 feet, it's mandatory.
Anyone else before we move to the next? Okay, so Jackie, I'm going to kind of seek your guidance on this a little bit. So we have 3 things that we need to look at. We're going to be looking at the face mask policy, the guidelines, and the travel guidelines. So the first one is discussion of face mask policy, file EBCFA, and it's the first reading. So everyone has that. I know that Jackie had some specific comments, so I don't know if you want to kind of start off.
Sure, thanks, Michelle. Yeah, so I looked at the Mass Association of School Committees came out with a revised draft face covering policy. And then of course we have the DESE guidance and we have the CDC guidance. So kind of based on all of that, I just made some minor edits. Some of it is really just to update it to fit with what's going on today. And some of it's a little more substantive that we can get into. So I think the easiest thing, if you're okay with it, I'll just go through paragraph by paragraph.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so we have the first sentence that says the Easton Public School District is committed to providing a safe environment as schools reopen during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I had changed that to the Easton Public School District is committed to providing a safe environment. I take out as schools and change it in schools and take out reopen. So is committed to providing a safe environment in schools during the, and then I stuck in the word ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So just updating it a little bit. The MASC had added some language, which I thought would be useful too. It kind of just sets the tone. And it says maintaining a safe environment is critical to the district's ability to returning students to a full-time classroom learning experience. Then after that, according to public health experts, so this is all the same, one of the best ways to stop the spread of coronavirus and to keep members of our school community safe is the use of face masks or face coverings. Therefore, in accordance with guidance from the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE, and the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, the following requirements are in place until further notice. So the rest of that just stayed the same.
Can I just clarify one thing? You
Sure.
are going to put that word verbiage that you just read after ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and before reporting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then, so the second paragraph would be slightly edited. It says a face covering that covers the nose and mouth must be worn by all individuals in school buildings. I would take out the words on school grounds, and then keep in and on school transportation, put a period there to take out even when social distancing is observed. So it would read, a face covering that covers the nose and mouth must be worn by all individuals in school buildings and on school transportation. Does that make sense?
That's made it.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the Mass Association of School Committees also has a paragraph. I don't know if we want to include this or not. Before going into exemptions for medical reasons, they have a paragraph that says individuals may be excused from the requirement for the following list of reasons per CDC guidance. And the individual has trouble breathing, is unconscious, is incapacitated, or cannot remove the mask or face covering without assistance. We didn't put that in our policy last year. I don't know if you want to add it this year or if you think it's not necessary to add in our policy.
I think last year we deliberately excluded that because it's, if I recall correctly from our discussion, it's that it's really going to be a nuanced.
Sure.
Yeah. We
Okay.
didn't want to put a suggested list in there when it's really on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. So then if we don't do that, then we go into the next paragraph that says, exceptions to this policy under certain circumstances would be limited to students with medical, behavioral, or other challenges who are unable to wear face coverings. And that's the same as last year. So there would be no edits there. The next paragraph says a written note from the student's healthcare provider is required for a requested exemption, must be submitted prior to the student attending school, and must be approved by the building principal in consultation with the school nurse. Again, there's no changes there if you're okay with that. Yes, okay. The next sentence, parents may not excuse their child from the face covering requirements by signing a waiver. No changes there. The next sentence, face coverings will not be required. So instead of when appropriate social distancing is enforced, I just changed it to face coverings will not be required under certain circumstances pursuant to the guidelines. Just to kind of leave it general, that way things are changing so rapidly, we can change the guidelines much quicker than the policy. I'm sorry, go ahead.
to the guidelines you said?
Yeah, so it'd say face coverings will not be required under certain circumstances pursuant to the guidelines.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next paragraph didn't change at all, which talks about the face covering being provided by the student's family. So there were no changes to that. The next paragraph that starts off.
I'm sorry to interject, just to be
Sure.
clear for people who don't have this in front of them.
Do you want me to read it?
Well, I just want to make sure that they know that it is to be provided by the family, but they will be provided by the school if the family doesn't have them or if the child doesn't have one. I just want to make sure people know that that is the same as last year. We have plenty of masks and we will give them out for anyone who needs them.
Great, thank you. So the next paragraph, if students are in violation of this policy, the students will be removed from the school building. I took out the words for in-person learning since that's all we're doing, until such time as they could comply with the requirements or the requirement is lifted. I don't know if you want to change that language to refer to the student handbook or anything like that, or if you want to just keep it as is.
Anyone have thoughts?
Is there language addressing this in all of the handbooks? Is that the place for it, or do we want to leave it in here?
It will be in the handbooks if you're asking me. This will be in the handbooks. I'm not saying it doesn't belong here. I'm not commenting on that, but it will be in the handbook.
So do we want to just leave it like this, or do we want to refer to the handbook and say, a more substantive explanation is provided in the handbook, or how would you like to handle that?
I don't think it's harmful to have it in both places.
Okay. So we could say, if students are in violation of this policy, the students will be removed from the school building until such time as they can comply with the requirements, as they can comply with the requirements as delineated in the school handbook.
Are we going to put that in the guidelines as well?
It's up to, whatever people want to do. I mean, I think that we have to have something written out as to what the consequences are going to be. And I don't know if it's in the guidelines or the guidelines and the handbook or a letter to parents or how we want to handle that.
Well, I think at the very least, it should be in the guidelines. I mean, because it may evolve over time or change over time, depending on all sorts of people, including council and DESE and so on. It at least belongs there. Is that currently, I haven't looked at a handbook for a while. Do the handbooks delineate consequences for failure to comply with certain regulations or whatever at this time? Does the handbook, my recollection from a long time ago is that there were consequences referred to in the handbooks, but I haven't, as I said, I haven't read one of the handbooks for a while, so I don't know currently whether that's the case.
It is the case. Any consequences or progressive discipline are in the handbooks. We do, just to clarify, we do look at mask wearing as a compliance issue versus a disciplinary issue at first. Certainly, we will do everything we can to work with people, of course, who have the appropriate medical documentation, but further, any accommodations that may help to mitigate concerns or questions. Certainly, we will exhaust all of those opportunities first. If it is simply a choice or it is just a non-compliance issue, ultimately, then there would be progressive discipline, and that would be indicated in the handbook. There's an expectation that students are, quote unquote, prepared for school. And that includes many things. And in this case, it includes wearing a mask. And so it's more about compliance and being prepared to school than it is about being seen as a disciplinary issue at first. Certainly, if that is not resolved, it is possible it turns into a disciplinary issue. And if that's the case, progressive discipline would be implemented.
Do parents have to sign a statement that they have read the handbook? Is that correct? At least it used to be.
Correct.
Okay, so.
And every student, every parent is aware that the handbook is given out every year, and they're reminded of that often, and students know that as well. So progressing through this, into the school year, knowing that that's been distributed, if someone doesn't sign for it and hasn't asked for it, the expectation is that they have received it and they're understanding of it, unless they contact the school directly.
How is the signing for it accomplished? How does that happen? I mean, as I said, my kids haven't been in school for a while, so I remember we had to physically sign a document attesting to the fact that we had read it, whether we had or not. So,
well, we try to make things as fluid, we try to facilitate things as much as possible through electronic means, but the days of getting a packet from your kids on the first day of school, unfortunately, still exist in some cases, and this is one of them.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, because I know so many things have really just gone online. I wasn't sure if we had managed that one too. Thank you.
I'm just going to jump in here. I like, Jackie, I like those 2 sentences that you have. And actually, it's just 1 sentence. But I like how, you know, comply with the requirement or the requirement is lifted. So I think it kind of takes care of a whole bunch of things all in 1 sentence. I like it.
Okay, so we'll just take out the for in-person learning and leave the rest as is. Okay, and then the rest of it just, I'm sorry, was somebody?
I'm sorry, the other thing I was going to ask, like from what I hear around and about, you know, when the kids went back, I don't think that there was an issue with masks. I mean, I know that there is probably going to be, maybe, but you know, the kids aren't wearing them outside, and in school they're wearing their masks, and then their teacher takes them on a mask break. From what I hear, the kids are really, really good about following the rules when they get to school. They're just go over and above, you know, doing what they're supposed to do.
No, it is true. We had 0 medical exemptions last year. So again, if there is a medical issue, it would be something that has manifest or developed since last year. The students will actually, because there's no mandate for masks outside at any time, they will actually be wearing masks less often than they did last year. So certainly the expectation is that everyone would be able to wear a mask again successfully, but we will deal with situations as they arise if we need to.
Okay, and so then the rest just is the same. Violations of this policy by staff will be handled in the same manner as other violations of the school committee policy. Visitors in violation of this policy will be denied entry to the school or district facility, and the policy remains in place until rescinded by the school committee. And those are all of the suggested edits I had to this policy.
Did anyone else have anything they wanted to add, take out, comment on?
Jackie, did the MASC version have updated reference links? If they did, I think we should incorporate those into ours.
Yep, I can put those links in. They're actually, yeah, there are a couple of updated. Some of them are still in our guidelines. We have the certain links, and the links do still work and take you to the updated guidance, but we can certainly put the links in this as well.
Okay, thanks. I think that'd be helpful.
Anyone else?
Well, theoretically, there's a typo.
Mm-hmm.
No, not really.
Yes.
No, it actually, I'm not sure. It's a little confusing because it's the title of the link, but it's of course not the actual link. It says Center for Disease Controls. It's actually Centers for Disease Control. They put the S in the wrong place. Whoever typed that out for the, see what I mean? That under the guidance statements, that Mass Department of Public Health, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which is actually it's Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or center is okay, but it's not disease controls anyway. So I think we definitely need to take the S out of controls. Very tight.
Is that in the MAS, that's in the MASC version?
Oh, am I looking at, you know what? I might be looking at the wrong one because I had
Yeah,
to
I don't see
withdraw
it
my-
here, but I'll double check.
face coverings policy, file EBCFA, no? That's
Well,
not what
the MASC one has the same file number.
Oh,
So just make sure it's the Easton
okay,
one.
so you're right. I was looking at the wrong one. Since I had so much trouble with my devices today, I don't even, it's amazing. I even got that one up. Okay. So
So if
never
it's-
mind.
No, so if it's okay, I'll just, I'll put the edits in and I'll send them to Lynn. Is that okay?
That's great.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for doing that. That was great.
And the date probably needs to be changed too on the end of that, right? I'm looking
Yeah,
at-
we'll update when, we'll put the new adoption date, whenever we make the decision about when we're gonna vote, at the next meeting, we can update that as well. Thank you,
Thank
Nancy.
you, Jackie.
September 9th,
you.
right, Jackie?
What?
We'll go on September 9th.
Yeah.
Is that fine? Or do you need it before then? We need to,
I mean, it's up to you guys. This is our policy. Our policy was never rescinded, so it's there. So whether you want to have it revised before the start of school or not, it's up to you. I mean, right now, our policy still says that kids are wearing masks on school grounds, so that's the only thing.
so we could do a really quick meeting. When would be the soonest we could do that, though? Could we do an emergency meeting? Because we wouldn't have the amount of time to post an agenda with typical time.
Could we do it Tuesday if it was posted tomorrow?
Tomorrow morning we could do, yeah, it could be Tuesday.
Would just be this one item.
Right, just to be voting on this.
All right. So is that what we want to do?
It probably makes sense because that's right before school starts and
Okay.
makes it clearer for families.
Okay. All right, so now we're on to discussion of COVID protocols and possible vote on mask guidelines and travel guidelines. Jackie, do you wanna?
Sure. So the guidelines might require a little more discussion. I'll
You
just
do
do,
face covering guidelines first?
yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
So starting, we'll just go through the same way, I guess. So starting with the first paragraph. I apologize if you can hear my dog in the background. The Easton Public School District is committed to providing a safe environment. And then I took out as schools reopen during and I inserted ongoing. So it would say the Easton Public School District is committed to providing a safe environment during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. That's just to kind of put it in the same line as the policy.
Jackie, can I make a suggestion to
Yeah.
keep the, I think in the other one, we had in schools. It kept the schools
Safe
and,
environment in schools, sure.
yeah, I think it just makes sense
Yep.
to have it consistent. Thanks.
And then the only other thing I added to that first paragraph is after it says the Easton School Committee adopted on August 20th, 2020, a face covering policy. And I was going to say as revised on whatever day we vote to revise, on our next, on our policies. So then going through the next, let's see. The following guidelines are provided to implement the face covering policy. So a face covering that covers the nose and mouth is required in all school buildings and district offices. I took out again on school grounds. So I have on school transportation, and then I changed this a little bit. So it would be on school transportation, comma, I took out the word and. It would say during all school sponsored events, comma, and sports related activities. I don't know if you want to have that specific in there or not. That was just kind of in compliance with one of the items on Desi's new guidance.
I think if we add that, we would want to specify indoors,
Right, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, and indoor
indoor
Sports-related
events and
activities.
sports
Yep.
activities, yeah.
So, and during all indoor school sponsored events. Okay. It says this requirement is applicable to all students, staff, parents, and visitors entering the buildings. I took out on school grounds, attending a indoor school event and or a indoor sports related activity. It's a little repetitive. I don't know if you want both sentences, or I could just kind of combine the two.
Could we just put a period after visitors?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. So the next paragraph, I didn't have any changes unless somebody else wants a change. It says it's again that parents are providing a clean face covering for their children, but that the school and that to provide an additional face covering to bring to school, and each face covering should be identified with the child's name. And then the third one is about staff providing their own face covering as well. So those were the same as last year. Unless somebody has any changes they want to make to that. Okay. So number 4, these go through the type of face coverings that will not be allowed. So A, I didn't make any changes to, which say face coverings with one-way valves or vents which allow air to be exhaled through a hole in the material. B, neck gaiters, I took out the language in parentheses because we're not requiring anything outside. C, I left. D, I left. E, face shields unless in conjunction with the face cloth covering, and it says or as discussed below, but I think those words may need to be taken out depending on what our discussion is on that. So we can kind of put that aside for now, if that's okay.
Okay.
And then those designated for costume purposes. And then it says appropriate face coverings should be A, I revised this language to be in accordance with revised CDC language. So it says be made of 2 or more layers of washable, breathable fabric. B and C, I didn't make any changes to. I added another D. Again, this was pursuant to the CDC website that says have a nose wire to prevent air from leaking out of the top of the mask. Do you want that added as well?
What was the wording? Have a what?
Have a nose wire to prevent air from leaking out of the top of the mask. That was on the CDC website.
I think it's good. I think it's good to have that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
Pretty
Okay.
much all the newer masks now do provide that.
Just from an operational perspective, it may be difficult to monitor that very carefully. Just putting
Well, we
that
could
out there.
strongly recommend then, I suppose.
Certainly, sure, yes.
Yeah, so
Okay,
maybe.
I can put
you're
in
right, you're right.
strongly.
We're
I
not
can
gonna check-
reword it to.
Yeah, we're not going to be
strongly
checking
recommend.
the nose wires, so.
Right, right.
Right.
And then I just obviously changed the lettering. I did check the links. The links still work, but I will update them and add any new ones. as I do with the face covering policy. Okay. Okay, so this 6 is kind of, all right. 6 may need to be changed a bit. So it says right now, face coverings may be removed under the following circumstances and only when social distancing or of at least 6 feet is possible. And then it goes on with hand washing. So what I was thinking, and I'd really like your input, is face coverings may be removed under the following circumstances. I took out and only when social distancing of at least 6 feet is possible. I didn't put any other distancing in that part. So it just says face coverings may be removed under the following circumstances and when hands can be washed or sanitized prior to removing the face covering or putting it back on. And then going through the first A, it says during designated mask break opportunities for students. I was suggesting during designated outdoor mask break opportunities for students, adding a line that says during designated indoor mask break opportunities for students when social distancing of at least 3 feet is possible. But I wasn't sure whether you wanted to have that language in there or not.
Dr. Cabral, is that consistent with how an indoor mask break will be conducted if needed? Is 3 feet?
Whenever possible, more than 3 feet,
Okay.
Even better.
Okay, so we have at least 3 feet.
3 feet whenever possible, and more than that, again, when possible.
Okay.
I think it's important to put whenever possible.
Whenever
That's what I
Because it
have.
may
At
not
least
be
3 feet is
necessarily 3 feet.
possible. Yep.
Okay, now,
And
sure.
Jackie? Oh,
Yeah.
so now that I'm on the strongly recommend bandwagon, I think we really should strongly recommend that whenever possible, mask breaks be taken outdoors. I mean, I know that that is kind of understood, but I would really like to have that in writing, and I would really like to encourage that. I mean, we have a much, much more transmissible variant now. So every time we have students in a class remove masks, there is a greater risk to everyone involved. That's just the reality. We have to live with it. I get that. But we can reduce the risk the more we take other kinds of mitigation measures like being outside. I know that a little instructional time is lost that way. I get that, but I think it would still be a good thing to recommend.
Not always, Caroline, for instructional loss, because a PE class outdoors, recess, lunch outside, those all serve as mask breaks as well. So there's not actually loss of instructional time during those points.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Sure. No, I'm just talking about the ones that maybe were occurring in the classroom just because it seemed like the easiest, most convenient way to do it.
Right.
I think
I just don't want people, and you didn't say this, but I just don't want people to think that, you know, if there are multiple mask breaks during a day, then it takes a lot out of the instructional time. A lot of mask breaks are embedded. Yep.
Right.
No, you didn't say that, but just for anybody watching.
that makes perfect sense. But
So
I don't know.
I can certainly work on the language and send people something.
I just think whenever possible, we really should encourage that. I mean,
And then I have a C during meal or snack time if outdoors, and D during a meal or snack time indoors when social distancing of at least 3 feet is possible. So I'll revise all that. So I didn't know, this was kind of in DESI's as well. When necessary to participate in elective classes, such as the use of wind instruments and band, when social distancing of at least 3 feet is possible and bell covers can be used where appropriate. Such activities should be held outdoors when possible. That was from the DESI's revised guidance. I don't know if we need to have it in our guidance, if you just.
well, I'm just a single voice, but I think anything indoors involving wind instruments or singing, the distancing just should be much more than 3 feet. That's just my opinion. I don't know where these classes take place. I know that last year we were using the auditorium or larger spaces. pretty often. Maybe that's not something that can happen now, but certainly if it can, I think that would be ideal. I mean, 3 feet apart with wind instruments or singing, belting out a tune, just doesn't sound safe to me at all.
Jackie, can you reread the statement?
Sure. When necessary to, so this is face coverings may be removed under the following circumstances. When necessary to participate in elective classes, such as the use of wind instruments and band, when social distancing of at least 3 feet is possible and bell covers can be used where appropriate. Such activities should be held outdoors when possible.
Now, obviously, this last sentence is important. I think we did discuss this when we talked about the instrumental classes and the choral groups.
That
And I
is
think-
consistent with our practice. I think, Jackie, I think your question is, do you need it here since it's
Right.
already in the DESI guidance?
Right.
I think.
But
Or-
my contention is the DESI guidance is not adequate to protect children.
So you want to add to this?
Well, I would like to say that for those particular activities, I mean, I'm asking if it's possible. If it's not possible, it's not possible. But for those activities, if they can be moved to an auditorium or to a larger space, and kids, I mean, 3 feet is really close. As I said, if you're belting out a tune, you're really not providing a safe environment.
Well, if they're indoors, they are required to wear a mask when they're singing.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, what about, see, that's why I was a little confused because it said, you know, there could be, what about the wind instruments that would there have to be the bell covers? Otherwise they'd have to be much more distanced, or what would be the,
Yes, that is what we're currently doing.
so every instrument does, every wind instrument does have a
Every
bell.
instrument that can be accommodated was accommodated last year and still will be. But in addition to that, again, we are saying 3 feet whenever possible and more than that whenever possible. So we will always use the largest distance
Well,
that's
for those,
possible in any application, for even for class seating.
right, but for this particular segment of the, you know, of our curriculum, like when I just feel like we can't, even saying 3 feet whenever possible, in fact, sounds like, well, we didn't feel like it was possible, so it's 1 feet and 2 feet. I just think for those particular activities, we can't say whenever possible. We have to say a minimum of 3 feet, and whenever possible, more than 3 feet.
That's more clear. That is more clear. Thank you.
Okay, I'll work on that language. Okay, so that was number 6. Now with number 7 and number 8, my biggest questions really are having to do with under, so for example, 7A item little 2I. So we give the option first of using a clear mask if it's not appropriate for a student to have a cloth mask. But then we also give the option of a face shield. And when I looked on the CDC website, you know, they will go through all of the exceptions as well. All it says about face shields now is it's up in the air, we don't recommend it. So I don't know whether we still want to have this option or whether we want to take out this option. And that it's the same as under English language learners as well.
Was this an issue, Dr. Cabral, if you recall last year, and how did special services handle these situations? Were the students able to use clear masks?
We did. Yes, we had clear masks, we had plexiglass dividers, and we had shields. However, the guidance on shields was different last year than it is this year.
Okay.
But we do have the clear masks again.
And did we have students who weren't able to use those and needed to use shields or plexiglass in place of using a clear mask?
There were no medical exemptions for any reason.
Okay.
Not that
And
I was ever notified of, and I've asked every school.
Okay, and then for instructional reasons, are you aware of, or could we maybe get some information on if when dealing with, hearing impairments or anything else, if there were times of instruction where the students, were using an alternative to a mask to facilitate instruction?
Well, the students were using the clear masks. It is possible, certainly I could see in a speech therapy or ESL situation where a teacher who is maybe having difficulty assessing a student in terms of going on this year, or the student is having difficulty seeing the enunciation, from a speech therapist or EL teacher, for example, that it would be possible for a short-term removal of the mask behind plexiglass, for example. But any staff member who wanted or wants the plexiglass for very special applications like that still has that available to them to use.
I'm talking specifically about the face shields to be used in place of a mask for students.
Yeah, my own feeling is that the CDC not recommending it is important. I think that they're usually very cautious. From what I've read, face shields are certainly not safe for, they may provide a little bit of protection for the wearer. They actually can make it more risky for those in the environment. Now, I don't know if children who are requiring the special services like the speech and language services, if they could be distanced quite a bit further. Obviously, the instructor would be wearing a mask. What I've read so far about face shields is that they may make things worse. They may actually increase the risk to people in that particular classroom. So I know that's different from last year, but we early on were just flying by the seat of our pants. We still are to some degree, but we've gotten a lot more information about these things in the very difficult 18-month period. So
guidance was different. It was recommended last year, and it isn't this year, just as you said. The other thing to keep in mind that is for these really specific applications, it's usually a one-on-one situation. This is not a classroom setting.
But I was wondering.
Yeah.
So you could create much more distance, presumably, that would protect the teacher. I'm concerned about the teacher as well, obviously.
Yes.
And the teacher presumably could be masked in most instances. As you said, if the student needs to see the teacher's lips move, that teacher, he or she, could wear a clear mask, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And they did. Yeah.
So
I'm just saying in an extreme case, perhaps where someone is having an exceeding amount of difficulty and they need to articulate something very clearly, they may remove it for a short amount of time, put it back on. Like, I'm really stretching for possible scenarios. It would not be the common practice.
I wonder, would it make sense here to maybe, if she has time?
Sorry, I don't even necessarily mean this for shields. I'm talking about the plexiglass divider. Okay.
I'm wondering if she has time, would it make sense to see if Teresa could review this and give us some guidance on what was actually needed in practice last year? I feel like there may be a lot in here that was just not scenarios that really came into fruition. And I think she or somebody from her department would best know what would be useful guidance in practice. But being mindful that we're on a timeline, I don't know if that's practical.
Well, of course, we can revise guidelines on an ongoing basis.
True.
And as we get more information, I mean, we really do already have more information about plexiglass shields and face shields. and it's not favorable.
Yeah.
In terms of
And I
their
think in
So-
last summer, we had those small working groups. So we were able to kind of communicate
Right.
directly with special services as we were talking about these kinds of issues. So maybe a check-in now to see what should be updated for this section would make sense.
I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Jackie, I don't know if you want to reach out, or I can have that as a takeaway and reach out to Teresa, whatever you think makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's no problem. I can certainly reach out to her, and then when I revise all of these, I can send you kind of a cover letter saying what she said, and I'll revise as she suggested. Does that make sense? I think that's a great idea, Jen.
Dr. Cabral, do you believe that Teresa is aware of the increasing amount of research that seems to indicate that face shields and plexiglass barriers may actually make things worse?
I do. And, certainly after the policies and the guidelines are updated, we are going to go over them in detail with the entire cabinet. So they'll be well aware of all of this.
No, I just asked because, I certainly totally agree with seeking information from Teresa about, what the usage was, what the types of occasions in which those kinds of devices were used. It's just that I wanted to be sure that, because this is relatively new information about it's really only been the last maybe few weeks that suddenly lots of labs are coming back with, research results that show that
And
these.
honestly, we've been through the schools multiple times. Mrs. Pruitt has as well. I'm sure somebody used the shield, but we actually in the MOA last year had the availability of shields and smocks for all staff, and we have a million of them because no one really requested them. So I can't say not one person wore a shield, but this is not something that was common by any means. And certainly with the new information, I don't think it's going to be problematic at all for us.
And I want to just add that I did see a couple people wear shields, but they had a mask on as well. So it was an
That's
additional.
fine. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty much fine. That really protects the wearer. I'm concerned about everybody else's, obviously, as well.
And those are the only edits I had to the guidelines. So if it's okay with you, I'll just go through and revise these. I'll check in with Teresa and send everyone revised drafts. And whenever we have our next meeting, we can just go through them one more time. That sound okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, travel guidelines. We don't really have that in this packet, so I don't, did you take those from that as well, Jackie, or?
You have the CDC guidance, which is what I
Yeah.
had recommended. So that's essentially the guidance, unless you want to make changes, and then we would do that in the EPS guidance, unless you're talking about your guidance from last year.
So then we would just revert where we left off in June last year. We would be changing to follow the CDC guidelines.
Yes, well, that's our recommendation to you, because we have the big difference of a large population of people who are vaccinated, and that changes the protocol quite a bit, as well as the test and stay protocol. So we didn't have either of those. And so this guidance really takes those into account. So this is what we're recommending, but that does not mean that you have to accept it. This is the minimum, just as the same with DESE. You can supersede that if you wish, but we are recommending it in this format.
So do we
For
need
consideration
to accept that, or can we just give a verbal support that?
So
Jen, go ahead.
I want to know if so looking at this compared to the DESE response protocols from August 13th, the CDC travel guidance for not vaccinated, it appears to me to be more strict than DESE's guidance for a confirmed close contact. So I just wanted to see if anybody else wanted to discuss that or feels that it's an issue. So the CDC guidance for not vaccinated domestic travelers is to get tested 1 to 3 days before travel, that's not a school issue. Get tested 3 to 5 days after travel and self-quarantine for 7 days, or self-quarantine for 7 days if you don't get tested. So that's consistent, I think, with the end of what we were doing at the end of
10
school.
days. Does it say 10 days if you don't get?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, 10 days. Yep. So I think that's consistent with how we wrapped up the school year. But looking at the DESE protocol.
Right. When I reviewed this a little bit earlier, at that point, I inserted the test and stay protocol. So that is an important consideration.
Okay.
They participate in test and stay. If they choose not to test, then they would quarantine.
Okay. All right. So hold on. Maybe I just might not have seen that in. So did we get a document on that? Hold on.
We have the CDC.
Okay.
No, it's just the CDC one, and I just verbally went over that with you guys. So
got it.
No,
Okay.
I have that written. Sorry.
Okay. So we would, instead of strictly following the CDC, the recommendation would be to
Include the test and stay.
Test and stay for unvaccinated, asymptomatic domestic travelers. Okay.
That's the recommendation.
Okay.
That's why I'm shaking my head. I'm not saying that is what the school committee has to do. Yes.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So that to me seems, agree or disagree, it seems consistent at least with what DESE is recommending for confirmed close contact.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps asymptomatic students in school
Mm-hmm.
after travel versus mandating a quarantine.
And staff, right.
And staff, yep. So I don't know, just if anybody else in the committee have thoughts or concerns on that.
Yeah, I think that makes
Otherwise,
sense.
I think to Jackie's point, after travel, if we were to go straight with the CDC and not employ the test and stay, if we are able to have that, we're still working on it. Then in essence, the CDC guidance, the guidance for travel would actually be more stringent than what we are doing for a confirmed close contact case. I think, if I'm summarizing what you're saying correctly, Jen. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is
Well,
why. Go ahead. Sorry.
One advantage of having guidelines and other information available to families that can obviously be changed. I mean, we just don't know, given how much more transmissible the current variant is, if the kinds of mitigation measures we're taking will be sufficient. Last year we did very well, even for that last period of time when the kids were all back full in person. Obviously the masking was huge. I mean, that is considered, next to vaccines, the most important mitigation measure. But it appears that even in some schools where masking is universal, unfortunately, the infection rate is higher than it was last year at the end of the year, because they're dealing with a different variant. So, we just have to watch, as we have been for 18 months, keep watching this virus and watching the transmissibility figures and things like that, because I do think that it makes sense to have consistency in the two, I guess they're not really policies,
Guidelines.
Guidelines, right? But we'll just have to see if that's sufficient.
Yeah, I agree, Caroline, 100%. Yeah, we'll find out.
Yep. A wing and a prayer, as they say.
Yeah. But I think if we can at least start with, again, the difference between last year and this year, one of the differences is, for unvaccinated populations, is, I mean, for everybody, is that we don't have the remote learning available for anybody as they're quarantining. So I think, with that consideration, the more we can do safely to keep as many kids able to show up as possible, the better. And we'll see how it goes. And, as you said, adjust accordingly.
We agree.
By the way, I wanted to say that I saw a couple of articles recently about how important air purifiers were and how a lot of school systems had not employed them. And that actually, I mean, masks, again, most important, but the air purifiers are huge. And I think the fact that you got on top of that way early last year, Dr. Cabral, is much to your credit.
Well, thank you for your support in that, because, that's necessary to make these very large purchases, even though it's with federal stimulus funding. It was purchases that could have gone to something else, but I appreciate your support and acknowledgement of the importance of having them.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, so you just are looking for our support of the travel guidelines as you delineated earlier,
Correct.
just a verbal support.
Right, and they will go in the playbook.
Do you need to hear that from everyone individually, or?
I would prefer that.
Okay. So a roll call approval or not approval? Support. Starting with Caroline.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
And Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Becky, thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you.
All right, and we've done district updates. So I believe we are on to public comments.
Okay, so we have Mike Garrett, 22 Summer Road. I do believe this was already answered, but I'm going to read it anyway. I know that this question was there before it was discussed. It says, what is the progressive disciplinary policy for children who refuse to wear a mask? Please be specific.
Yes, it was discussed before. I can't be specific of what. First of all, let me just say that, or repeat that we consider this a compliance and a preparedness for school issue versus a discipline issue first. And certainly we'll work with anyone who has a medical condition, a documented medical condition, or requires accommodations that we can provide. Should it turn into a disciplinary issue, and we have exhausted all efforts to avoid that, then there will be progressive discipline. In terms of being specific about that, I can't yet, because we needed to have this conversation with the school committee tonight. I will meet with the cabinet, and then we will determine what that is at each level. It's important that our progressive discipline is always developmentally appropriate, so it will be slightly modified for each level. And so that will be in the handbook, and it will be published in the playbook as soon as we finish that. And I think it is important to note, however, that in all cases, while there are accommodations being made, or while there is any sort of progressive, discipline that is taking place, that the student will not be in the classroom with the general population. We will not have students in the classroom without accommodations or unmasked. The whole point of this is for the students to be protected, or protecting the other students around them. And so they would not be in the general classroom population while that process was taking place.
Okay, the next question is from Erica Mandel, 50 Main Street. Is it going to be up to teacher discretion to keep classroom windows open all year again?
Air circulation certainly is beneficial. It is not necessary, however, in our schools for the reason that Caroline alluded to earlier. We have either the high quality HEPA filtration from rooftop units and or air purifiers in every space that is tailored to the square footage of the space and its purpose. And so it is not necessary to open the windows to have the air purified regularly throughout the day. However, just as in non-COVID times, certainly it's a teacher's discretion for comfort as well, whether windows are open or not. And so they will not be mandated to be open because it's not necessary. But again, for temperature regulation or a concern for safety, if someone wanted to open a window, they certainly could. I'm sure that staff is always cognizant of student comfort as well. But that is more of a comfort question than a safety question, because we do have the air exchange happening with the purifying system.
Lorraine Dausch, 60 Eastman Street. Dosh, sorry. I have not heard any other options for students and parents who are deeply uncomfortable with the mask mandates. Will there be remote options for these families?
There are not Easton Public School remote options. The Commissioner of Education has, within his authority, has determined that school on learning time will not be satisfied with any remote instruction. So we simply do not have the option of providing remote instruction. The commissioner has said that the only application where it would be considered valid for time on learning requirements would be when a student is being quarantined, if the school has the capability of doing that. And we do not have that capability this year. We are losing all of our facilitation staff and many other things that were in place last year with federal stimulus funds that we just don't have this year. And so it is not going to be possible for remoting for any reason, but certainly not for discomfort with masks, because the commissioner has deemed that is not acceptable for time on learning. Other options, if a family is looking for a homeschool option, then they can reach out to Assistant Superintendent Chrissy Pruitt, who handles all of our homeschool population. There are 2 Massachusetts public schools that are fully remote, Greenfield Academy and TEC. Both of those are public schools recognized by Massachusetts. The student, however, would need to unenroll from Easton Public Schools and enroll in one of those schools. And then obviously charter or private schools run under different mandates and regulations. And those are all individualized, and I can't comment on those, but for public schools, that would be the answer for public schools. There is not a remote option for people who choose not to wear a mask.
And Lorraine also asked, are there options for families that feel unsafe with their children wearing a mask? This is not right because many families don't feel comfortable with this. There should be options.
Those would be the option. The ones that I just listed would be the options.
And then lastly, she also shared a YouTube video of a school committee meeting up in New Hampshire. I don't know if you'd like me to share that with all of you via email. I don't know if that's allowed. Just for your viewing pleasure. Okay. Whoops. Sorry. Amy Duffy, 178 Washington Street. If my child has symptoms the morning of school, example, runny nose or congestion, and I do a Binax Now test at home, am I still able to send them to school with a negative Binax Now test? Or would they have to be tested locally for PCR prior to return? Thanks for all your hard work with the new school year approaching and the Delta variant making its presence known.
Thank you. We are expecting a shipment of Binax rapid PCR tests in the district. We have not determined yet, because we just received confirmation of that shipment, and we have our emergency nursing meeting on Tuesday. We have not yet determined where that will take place. I do not believe that they will be sent home from the school department, at least to begin. I believe that they will take place in school. DESE has assured us that they are able to be self-administered by children as young as 5. But again, we don't have them in hand and we have not had that conversation yet. So I can't answer that. However, if someone has a test on their own that has not been distributed by the public school, at least to start, we would not be able to accept that. It would have to be through the school department tests that are provided by the Department of Education.
Jennifer Antebi, 5 Judith Road. I'm smiling because people are starting to type their names phonetically for me, so I appreciate it. And I probably still mispronounced it, and I do apologize for that. Will you be requiring a copy of a student or faculty's vaccination card? Thank you.
It is a great question. I'm sure I'm more frustrated than anyone else that we don't have this all in writing just yet. But again, it's because of the recent changes that we have been given and the fact that we're going to meet on this on Tuesday. However, there are a couple of reasons why we are going to be securing this information confidentially from staff. One is because some of our protocols for absences are different for vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals. So we need that information. But secondly, as you heard earlier, perhaps if you were here, the commissioner's determination that people can remove masks when there's 80% of students and staff vaccinated. So we would need to know how many staff are vaccinated. So we will be confidentially collecting that information as soon as we can. However, we do not have plans yet to collect student vaccination cards. That's an operational issue we're trying to work through. I believe it would be my suggestion, at least at first, that the staff, you have to remember, we're not sure how inundated we may or may not be with the staff that we have. And so at first, at least, I would recommend to the nursing staff that everyone is treated as though they are unvaccinated and given the information if they are a close contact and need to quarantine. And then at that point, a student or parent could provide the vaccination card and we could adjust accordingly for a test and stay protocol for the student to return to school if they're asymptomatic and wear a mask. So we will probably do it on a case-by-case basis to start. And then once we are able to determine a way to efficiently and effectively collect cards from all students, we will send out that information.
That's all we have this evening for public comment.
Thank you, Chrissy. Okay, Superintendent Notes.
I'll be brief because I have to be honest. Unfortunately, most of my time has been spent with the COVID back to school planning, but I just want to, on a very, very, very positive note, I want to really let everyone know about the high caliber of candidates that we have been hiring for the start of the school year. We had an unusual amount of retirements and movements this year. One, because COVID was very inspirational to some people to perhaps leave a year or two before maybe they had previously planned, and I certainly can understand that. But we had a lot of movement, and some of that, or a lot of that, has to do with our new building. Some staff really want to move to the lower grades to be in the new building when it comes online. Some people would prefer not to and would prefer to stay. And so perhaps they go from a pre-K to 2 grade to a 3 to 5 grade or even grade 6, which is part of their certification. So we did have a lot of movement, and I have to say the administrative team, as well as the staff members who volunteer their time to work on these hiring committees throughout the summer, have just done an exceptional job. The candidates that have been forwarded to me and Mrs. Pruitt, I interview all administration and Unit A professional staff. Mrs. Pruitt interviews other staff, for example, paraprofessionals and interventionists, for example. So I just want to say that I think everybody's gonna be very excited about who we've been able to attract. Again, Easton enjoys a very good reputation in our community, and we're fortunate for that because we do get a very high quality candidate and many. We have literally gone through thousands upon thousands upon thousands of resumes and application packages for the positions we have. We get up to 200 applications sometimes for one position, and we had over a dozen that we had to fill. So it has been a lot of work, but certainly a pleasure to meet all of the new staff. They're all extremely excited to get started. Some are moving from other districts, and some are brand new to teaching and did their student teaching during a pandemic. So they're quite hardy for sticking with it. And so it's very interesting to meet people whose first experience has been in this environment. And it's kind of all they know. So I think they will be pleasantly surprised at how different it's going to be when this is not the situation. So I did want to just highlight that. It is an exciting time of year for us. And very pleased with our new class of 22, if you will.
Got it? Thank you. Assistant Superintendent Notes.
I also had new teacher orientation to discuss, and just to piggyback on what Dr. Cabral was saying, it was fun. I watched one of our brand new teachers walk in and literally just be so excited to see one of our veteran teachers. And as I spoke to her, I asked, have you known her? And she said, no, I just met her in the interview. And she said to me that she'd interviewed at different places and this just feels like home. And it really is a testament to our staff on their process that they go through in the hiring process. But this group of educators coming into our district, paraprofessionals, interventionists, monitors, and teachers, of course, are phenomenal. And we have new nurses and things like that. So they're absolutely phenomenal. And I think everyone will be really excited. I did want to share with you, because I haven't had the opportunity, about our Summer Enrichment Academy. We had our Summer Enrichment Academy through the month of July. It was for students in grades K through 12. It was called the Summer Enrichment Academy K through 8, or the C, as Dr. Cabral wonderfully provided the acronym for it. So we all were saying that they were spending the summer at the C, SEA, and at the high school, it was more of a credit recovery program. It's important to note that this was federally funded through one of our ESSER grants and another grant that we had applied for. So this was federal funding. This is not something that typically happens here in Easton due to limited funding that we have, but the success that we had was instrumental. And so I just wanted to share with you a couple highlights. The K through 5 coordinators pulled together some facts for me that I thought were interesting, because I know that many of us were concerned, especially about our youngest learners. And so we did do a pre and post assessment on using our STAR testing, which is a tool we use in grades 3 through 8. And there was up to, in grades 3, 4, and 5, no grade level showed a loss in the area of reading. Up to a 22-point improvement on scaled scores per grade level when compared to previous testing that was shown in grades 3, 4, and 5 in reading. Also, no grade level showed a loss in the area of math, and up to a 30-point improvement on scaled scores per grade level when compared to previous testing. The conclusion that they found, and they were extremely excited and happy to report, was there's absolutely no summer slide in the C program in grades K through 5. I wanted to share with you some student feedback that I thought was great. They asked the students to share some of their thoughts on the program. And one student said, we got to do activities and projects and learn some ELA. If I could change something, it would be having the SEA longer. I liked getting time with old friends and making new ones. It helped with my math. I liked learning about dolphins. I want summer school to be longer, and I want my teacher to know that she's awesome. And then we also asked parents for feedback. And one parent said, my daughter loves school again. Thank you so much. Another parent said, I only signed him up for the first session because I wasn't sure if he would like it, but he was begging to go to the second session. Thank you for a great program. They looked forward to going to class every day. Thank you for the continued help and support system for them, even in the summer. Another parent said, my son was happy to go every day. He had a great experience. Thank you. Another parent said, would love it offered every summer. And then lastly, another parent said, my daughter loved attending C. Thank you for making it a fun learning experience for her. So I just wanted to share that with you about the C program. I think that it was the Summer Enrichment Academy. I think that it was overall a very successful program. We were able to service close to 300 students that don't have summer services designated to them. And boy, did they take advantage of it. And it was such a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And also, our teachers that contributed, our paraprofessionals that came back and did some of the work, and our coordinators were absolutely phenomenal. And our administrators that were there in the building supporting them. It was all hands on deck mentality, just like it was for the past year and a half. And it was absolutely wonderful. So I wanted to just share that with you. And lastly, today we met with, we had our summer retreat with our curriculum leaders. It also was a wonderful event. Our curriculum leaders are representatives from grades K through 8, and then our department heads, as well as our administrators. We talked a lot about moving our students forward and not having to go back and reteach material from a previous grade. In fact, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has put forth what's called acceleration roadmaps. And we analyze that at the classroom level and really put together some plans on how to utilize this with our staff and what to focus on so that our students are continuing forward and really focusing on the skills that they gained during this pandemic. Because our students have gained a lot of skills academically, and how do we kind of really foster that and help it with some gaps that they may have, or some skills that that may need review, but not necessarily having to go back and reteach a half a year of curriculum, because that actually, in fact, hurts a child's progress. So we talked a lot about remediation versus acceleration, and it was a wonderful experience. Our teachers are ready to go, and they are excited to be there and excited to welcome all of our children back in our buildings. And so that's the update I have for you this evening. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Anyone have any questions? No? Awesome, though. The summer went so well and was so well received. That's great. Okay, school committee notes. Caroline, you have anything?
Well, I just wanted to remind everyone that there is an opportunity to sign there's going to be a beam banner, which is one of the final beams for the new Blanche Ames Elementary School will be placed with the signatures of hopefully many, many people in the community. There'll be an attachment to it's like a leaf that people sign, and then this will be attached to that beam that's going to be raised at the appropriate time. But I don't know if Dr. Cabral, did the press release go out to all staff and parents, or did it just go out to all staff?
Staff and parents.
Oh, good. So I just wanted to be sure that
and
really
the whole, and parents of the whole district. So even up to high school age. For people not familiar with building projects, this is for schools it's a symbolic ceremony that takes place when the last steel beam is being placed on a building before they then start putting up the walls and encapsulating the school and working on the inside. So it's representative of that. And it's, again, it is symbolic also in the sense that these are not signatures that are going to be seen once the building is done. It's more like a time capsule. It's inside the wall. However, it is a symbolic gesture that you are a part of history, you're a part of the building. And so we have 3 vinyl banners that are available until tomorrow, which are, there's one at Town Hall, there's one at the Ames Free Public Library, and there is one here in the foyer of central office at 50 Oliver Street. And we suggest anyone who has any interest at all in being part of this to come and sign the vinyl that will be put on the banner. We are doing vinyl instead of the beam. It will be a vinyl banner put on the beam. The reason we are doing the vinyl banner this year is because unfortunately it's such a tight construction site that we aren't able to make the actual beam ceremony where people would sign directly onto the beam. We can't make that public because we don't have a safe space for people to be where they could see that. So we are inviting them to sign the vinyl banner, and it will be placed directly on the beam, which will then be hoisted and put on the top of the building. Thank you for saying that, Caroline. That's very important.
Well, and also since we expect the new elementary school to be part of the community for a minimum of 50 years and maybe much longer, you know, you really will be a part of history, because probably eventually it will be replaced, and maybe that beam will be shown to the future members of the community with all of the signatures of people who, well, hopefully most of them will still be around, but maybe not. The school might last as long as 100 years. That's what they're telling us. So anyway, thank you, Dr. Cabral, for elaborating on that. That's it. Thank you, Michelle.
Dr. Cabral, have we done that at our other schools?
Well, I wasn't here for the construction, so I can't answer that.
Nancy has her hand up. Yeah.
No,
Nancy, you're muted.
I don't believe we did that. I mean, I've
Nancy,
been
you're
around
muted.
for all of them.
In 2005, the senior class signed a beam, and I think the faculty, for when they were remodeling the high school. So there was a beam over there. The class of 2005 all signed it, so they were up there. That was when they were, you know, in that portion of construction. So yes.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if they did it at our.
Why I have you, Nancy.
Okay. So a couple things. First of all, with this heat wave, I have several questions about, is there AC? Well, first of all, they asked, speaking of the new school, is there going to be AC in the new school? And I said, they have a ventilation system, but I don't think it's AC.
You are correct. It's called a chiller system. It actually was supposed to be in the high school, but it was value engineered out at some point during the process. It is an air exchange that drastically reduces the temperature in a building when it's really hot. So it isn't formally an air conditioning system, but it is far advanced from what our elementary schools have now, and is intended to provide a comfortable temperature throughout the building at all times. But it's not an air conditioning system.
Okay, thank you. The other thing that came up from that, am I incorrect saying that Oliver Ames RO and Easton Middle School have the fittings for air, like the ducts and stuff for air conditioning, if we ever did have to, you know, have air conditioning, or do we need systems put in?
So that's also an interesting question. We actually toured all the building. We toured the buildings this summer. The municipal building committee is involved with that. We don't know if that ductwork is there. We don't know, because we're not sure at what point of the project that was value engineered out. Was it after the ductwork was put in, or was it prior to that? Well, I'm saying obviously, but I don't know if it's obvious, but from what we discussed and had confirmed by engineers, if it was done after the duct work was placed, then it would be significantly less expensive to put in the systems to make those chillers operational. However, we don't know that, and we would have to do an exploration in the buildings, in the walls, to see if that's the case. Municipal Building Committee is actually discussing this, and they have been asking about it, and we've been working with them. We will continue to work with them to see. It isn't, you know, with the school building project, candidly, and some other things that are going on in town, it is not the priority right now, but it is definitely on the radar. But I can't answer if the ductwork is there or not, because we don't know. We know the mechanical systems aren't there, obviously, but it would certainly make a big difference if that already was there, as opposed to retrofitting it in terms of expense, but we don't have that answer yet.
Right, thank you. Because you know there's going to be another heat wave in September. All right.
Well,
the next
it
thing
definitely won't be done in September, just
I know.
I can tell you for sure.
I'm just saying, I mean, it's every September. It's not just this one. Okay. Also a shout out on the new teacher orientation Monday and Tuesday to Kristen Marani. She did a great job. Jen Starr, thank you very much. You represented the school committee so well. You gave a great speech. And along the lines of the beam, everybody touched on this, but 50 Oliver Street is Friday 9 to 3. Town Hall on Elm Street is 8:30 to 12:30. And Ames Free Library is 10 to 5. And it would be pre-K to 2 parents, staff, supporters, anyone can go and sign those vinyl things to put up on the beam. You know what? So it's memorabilia, do it.
And, it says pre-K to 2 parents because it's presumed that they are most interested, but it could be any taxpayer who's supporting the building, of course, anyone. You don't even have to have children. Anyone at all is welcome to come and sign.
Supporter.
Yeah.
And Dr. Cabral, you made a nice speech too on Monday. That was very good. And my other question, on Tuesday, did they get to take the bus ride or not?
Oh yeah.
Oh, you did the bus ride? Did you go to Hilliard's?
We do a tour for our new staff. We do a tour of Easton. We end at Hilliard's for an ice cream because, you know, we want them to know what Easton is really like.
It did have to be shortened due to construction, but they did get a gist of the historic value and presence in Easton. They just weren't able to get down towards South Easton, unfortunately.
Right. Well, that's okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Jackie?
I just wanted to wish everyone good luck next week. I can't believe we're here. I'm not sure I'm ready, but good luck with the first week of school.
Thank you. Jen?
I think everything's been covered, except I did want to thank Dr. Cabral for inviting us to the your cabinet workshop. I know it was a couple weeks ago, but we didn't have comments at our last meeting. So just want to, you know, it's always we always appreciate those invites, and it's always a good experience to meet with the staff and see you guys, you know, in action and all the work that's being done. It's always a really nice glimpse into a side of things that we don't always get to see. So just really appreciate being welcomed as part of that process this past summer and a couple summers ago.
Joining us, we appreciate your time. We really do.
It was a great afternoon. And I think that's it. So good luck, everybody, and eke out those last couple of days of summer, because Wednesday will be here before we know it. So
I also want to say good luck and welcome to all the new teachers in Easton and new and old, and have a great year. And thank you, Jen, for representing us on Monday. You know, all new teachers know it's a very busy time of year, and I had to go into my own 2 schools that day, so I wasn't able to make it. And I apologize to everyone, but it sounds like it was a very successful event, and everyone's looking forward to a great year. So thank you. All right. So before we go into executive session, our next meeting is September 9th at 5 o'clock. Just so everyone has that. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session, not to return to open session, for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to collective bargaining of the Easton Educators Association, Units A, B, and paraprofessionals. And in my opinion, having this discussion in public would be detrimental to the bargaining position of the school committee. Do I have a second?
DeLuca, second.
All right, roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Westman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.